It's a little bit tricky fishing out this deep. You're going to be fishing a little bit heavier jig, about a 3/8, and you first of all want to make a pretty long cast because the water is clear, so you want to get away from the boat, but you also want to have some room to work that jig back. Now the first thing I do when that jig hits the water is I start to count, and the reason that I do that is sometimes, especially if it's a little windy out, it's hard to tell when that jig hits the bottom in deep water. And pretty much with a 3/8 ounce jig, if you count, each second will be a foot of drop. So if you know you're casting up into about 20-25 feet of water, you're probably going to have to count down 20 or 25 counts. So once you know it hit the bottom, then the next thing is to simply pop that jig pretty aggressively up off the bottom. You want to get that fish's attention. So you pop it up off the bottom, but then after you pop it up, you want to hold your rod up in the air and let that jig swim towards you on a tight line. Now the key is out here is the water is cold. It's 48, 50 degree water, so they're not going to just pound it all the time. In fact, they bite it 3 different ways we found out here. The first one is if that jig is swimming towards you on a tight line, if they happen to bite it while it's swimming towards you, you will get the classic tick bite. They're sucking it in, it's a tight line, tunk, you'll feel that bite. The second one that you're going to get is when you go to lift that jig off the bottom, many times they're sucking it right off the bottom. This is called a presence bite. Basically, they've grabbed it. When you go to lift, there's a presence or a weight, set the hook. I'm setting into a rock, the edge of a rock. Something happened down there where I feel a little weight or presence, I set the hook. Hopefully that rock starts swimming. Now the third thing is, and this really is something that Dale talks a little bit about, is getting a bite on the up. And basically what's happening sometimes there is I think that fish is sitting there looking at that jig on the bottom, and when you go to sweep it up, that first little movement, tail just starting to twitch and swim, that fish is sitting there in position, he grabs it, and you actually, as you're coming up, get a bite. So you're gonna have to feel for 3 different bites. We're using sensitive rods, we're using no stretch line, and right away when we feel anything, setting the hook and getting these fish in the boat.